All right, welcome to lesson 3 on where we put mathematical logic into the programming language. Now, I hope you've watched the tutorial on processing, and I hope you've played around and created a static diagram or a dynamic. The difference between a static and dynamic is static does nothing, you just kind of look at a picture, and dynamic might have done things where you used your mouse around, and I hope you've checked in the reference and had some time to play with it. And if you have any questions, of course, please ask. But what I've done now is I've set up kind of the program that we would have, and I put some comments in. So at the top usually is where we're going to declare variables, and we'll cover that in here. The void setup is anything in there runs once, and I made a size 800 by 600. Of course, your size could be anything you wanted, but I just a size that would fit in the screen that I'm recording on. And then void draw, and in there anything that loops. So what we're going to do now is we're going to embed some logic inside this processing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the loop, and I'm going to show you a simple way that we can change the background. So now, instead of kind of someone just watching your program, they're going to have some interactivity into this. So how we do is if statements work are the following, is we do an if, then we put in brackets what needs to be true, and let's pretend we're going to say if mouse x is less than 400. Now, what I'm going to do is you'll just kind of go over this here is the size. It's 800 pixels wide is when I create my sketch. So now this is saying is if the mouse X takes on a value that's less than 400, which means less than half the screen. We open a curly bracket and we close the curly bracket down here, and then what will happen now is it will only run this part if the if statement is true. So this now works like a conditional. This is the if, and inside this bracket is the then part. And so let's say we're going to make the background a red color. So if you remember, it's red, green, blue. All red, no green, no blue. Okay, now let's run a different if. If mouse X is greater than or equal to 400, is we're going to make the background all green. So no red, all green, no blue. So when I run this, is you're going to see that it is red, but the moment I put my mouse over to the other side, it becomes green. And flipping back, we kind of get this Christmassy look, switching back and forth. Now, of course, that's not that actually engaging at all. So now let's try to put some ands and ors in. So now I'm going to make some quadrants. So I'm going to do, if my mouse is in the top left quadrant, top right, bottom left. Now before we go on, you have to remember that this here is 0, 0, and as we go down, this actually is increasing y values, and as we go across, it's increasing x values. So if we kind of think, what kind of values would the mouse take on here? Well, it's going to take on values less than 400, but also less than half the height of the screen. Down here, we'll say in the opposite corner is values that are greater than half the width, but also greater than half the height. So to put that in is we're going to do an AND in here. So if you remember, going back to lesson 1, AND in processing is 2 ampersand signs. So this is going to read if mouse X is less than 400, meaning on the left side, and the Y of the mouse is less than 300, which would be half the height. We're going to run red. So now I will add another one where if mouse X is less than 400 and mouse Y is greater than or equal to 300, what we're going to do is we're going to make a background which is all blue. So no red, no green, but all blue. So now what you'll see here is, and there's going to be kind of something that's going to happen. You'll see in a second why this it's not going to be quadrants first. If I'm in this quadrant, green, okay, and if I only in this quadrant I go blue. Now I want you to think, why does this not work on this side? Here you can see I have two kind of imaginary quadrants, but on the right side I have only one side. Hopefully if you look at the code, is because I have one code here that has nothing that separates whether it's up or down. So this is saying as long as it's on the right hand side, it's going to go green. Okay, what I will do is delete all this, and let's try how ORs work. So we're going to do if mouse X is less than 400, which is, again, here I'll zoom up, is half less than half the width, or mouse Y is greater than 300, what I want to do is make the background red. Okay? So what it's going to do here is if your mouse is less than 400 or your mouse Y is greater than 300, meaning if you're either on the left side of the screen or you are on the bottom half of the screen, it's going to run red. Okay? And we'll do an if statement, of course, just the complete opposite. If mouse X is greater than 400 or mouse Y is less than 300, what we'll do is we'll run the background green. So green and red just down here. Now, here is where processing actually happens very, very, very quickly. So I'm going to kind of just move my window over so you can see that why does it go green here and red down here? Well, this first code, if, is saying if the mouse X is less than 400, which it is, it's kind of on this side, right? Or if the mouse Y is greater than 300. So you can see that this part is true. The first part is true, and so you think it should be red. However, in the matter of a split second, processing goes down here and says, well, wait a second, mouse Y is also less than 300, making this true, and now we're going to go back to green. So I know we don't really see it, but what ends up happening is it runs red, and then it runs green instantly. Now, one quick trick is, and this kind of really isn't mathematical logic, but we do, in programming you see quite a bit of this, is what's called an else if. An else if means it's going to run this, and only if this isn't true does it run this next line. See, before it will look at both of them, whether their first one is true or not. And so now you'll see what ends up happening is when I'd run the else if, we don't have that anymore. And now we have the complete opposite, where we have a green only in one quadrant, while red is in the other three. And the reason is this if statement here is actually taking up 3 quadrants. So again, you'll see this is here. When I'm over here, it's making the first statement true, mouse X is less than 400. Here, mouse X is less than 400. Here, mouse X is not less than 400, nor is it actually greater than 300. So that's why it runs green. And then the other one is mouse X still isn't less than 400. However, mouse Y is greater than 300. So I know that was kind of a lot of words and a little probably confusing, but if you kind of write that in your code as you're watching this video and you kind of run it and play around with the numbers, you'll see. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pause the video and I'm going to kind of get a code running here and we'll talk about it. Okay, so I would suggest you just pause the video and make sure you code this in just so you can kind of look at your own screen as I'm talking about this. And make sure that you have the semicolons and the brackets where you need to be and capital letters where they need to go to. So you'll notice one thing I've changed is I've put the background of 255 up at the top, which means it's going to set up, and since it's only one parameter, it's a grayscale, and 255 means all color, which again, if you've ever taken a physics class, all color means white. So it's going to run a white background. Then in the draw, you'll notice without any kind of if or whatever, it's going to run a rectangle where the top left corner is going to be where my mouse X and mouse Y are, and the width and height are 25, which actually is a square. Okay, that is hence why in this language we don't actually have a square, because a square is just a fancy rectangle. Now it says if mouse X is less than or equal to 10, or mouse X is greater than or equal to 790, I want you to run the background again. Now you're going to notice for the first time ever, I don't have the background running every loop. So you're going to see something a little different. So you're going to notice that you'll see that looks like the rectangles are kind of cloning themselves. The reason they're cloning themselves is as I move my mouse around, it keeps drawing a rectangle. But it doesn't actually redraw the background every time. Now, if I want it to draw the background every time, you'll see I need my mouse less than or equal to 10, or greater than or equal to 790. So where would my mouse X be less than or equal to 10? Would be on the far kind of left side. And where would it be greater than or equal to 790 would be on the far right side. So here's what you're going to see. As soon as I go left here and I get within 10 pixels, it draws in the background. Or if I get within 10 pixels on this side, it draws in the background, thus erasing it. Now, we would say it's erasing it, but in reality, it's actually just kind of drawn the background over top of all those squares. So we can say erase, but it really is, there is no erase command in processing. Alright, so let's add a couple more things. So I'm going to pause the video and add a couple more commands. Okay, what I've drawn or added now is if mouse Y is less than 300, and I've left it blank because I'm going to talk about it as I code it in, and if mouse Y is greater than or equal to 300. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the fill command. So if it's less than 300, meaning since the screen is 600 pixels high, if it's in the top half, we're going to fill the rectangle, and I'm just going to make a random number. You can change the numbers if you want into this color. If it's now greater than or equal to 300, we're going to use kind of another thing that in programming we like to use is random numbers. So we're going to say the red, pick a number between 0 and 255 randomly. In the green, pick a random number between 255. And in the blue, pick a number between 0 and 255. And you're going to notice here something that's going to kind of maybe hurt your eyes, I don't know. And what you'll see here is when it's on the top, it fits that weird color, that color I just kind of randomly numbers put in. But as soon as I go to the bottom here, look at that. Now, you'll see the top erased. The top erased, as you'll notice, is because I accidentally went to the far left side. But it's not because I covered over. So this kind of maroon color, and then we get some randomness. Even if I just hold it there, that shows you actually how fast processing is running the loop. Every single one of those flashes it's because it's ran the loop and picked a different random color. And so now we can kind of get these kind of little crazy drawings. Now, I wouldn't recommend, but you could also make the background a random color. The reason I don't recommend it is then it's going to be very, very flashy and it might hurt your eyes. But so that's how we can start to now do some different things in processing.